Karl is the fire, and Karlawangk is the language. And it means a few different things. That means fire, talk. When we speak from that fire, we speak from that heart, fire in our gut, and we speak the truth. That fire things you into action.
Hello to everyone listening. Welcome back to Karlawangk Fire Talk podcast. This is episode 2. You're joined by host Karen Cox, and you're with Aaron Sutton and Emil Boxer. Just a reminder that if you are looking to listen to us, you can find us on Anchor, or you can find us on the other platforms such as Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. If you're loving what we're talking about here on the Fire Talk podcast and you want to hear more of Karlawangk going forward, we'd really appreciate it if you can go find us there on those platforms. But if you also are on Facebook, Instagram /YouTube, we'd also like it if you can try find us there as well. In the future, we're going to be posting our visuals as well as the audio on those platforms. Can't wait to get into this massive discussion. Karlawangk, the fire has started, boys. How are you feeling today?
Feeling good, Russ. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, man, feeling excited. Just like prepped and ready to go. Yeah, so let's get into it.
What did you get up to today with the lockdowns coming into place?
Just getting ready. This week was meant to be the start of school. It was meant to be the start of the kids going back to school. I've been dealing with a little bit of a back injury, so just everything was starting to get ready to go. And then we found out this afternoon, oh, wait a second, one more week. So just trying to prep everything, making sure the kids don't drive us crazy. It also gives me another week to heal. That's it.
So for all the people listening in Perth, Western Australia, if you don't know already, we've gone into a 5-day lockdown, which means that you've got 5 days to listen to the Karlawangk podcast. Emil, what did you get up to today up there in Broome?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. It's actually been pissing with rain the last 2 days. It's flooded everywhere. It's really cool. There's when it comes up to wet season time of the year here up in the north, it's really exciting because the rain comes and it feeds all the vegetation, it feeds all the insects, and everything eats the insects, and everything that eats the insects eats that, and then it's just everything just becomes alive. So there's like frogs and snakes and goannas and stuff and kangaroos everywhere. So it's really exciting. It's really an exciting time for this part of Australia. What did I get up to today? I went to one of the parks, I guess you could say. It's more not like a park, but it's just basically the scrub up near the point, Ganthian Point. I went down there and did some photography, shot some birds and stuff. And it feels so quirky, shooting birds, because I feel like I'm going full bird observer. So I'm just there parked up with my huge camera in the scrub, taking pictures of these birds. But yeah, had a bit of fun with that. I love photography. Then I went down to Cable Beach, and there were these surfers because there was mad swell from the storm. So I got some really good photos of them. Then came home and had a nap and woke up and yarned with you mob, and now I'm here.
Hey, but I want to add too, I love your videos when you're walking along the beach there, messing with them octopus and all that stuff, right? That's deadly. The squid and that. Yeah. It's sick. I don't know if you've seen that or not, Kieran, or not.
Plug your Instagram, Emil. Where can we find you so we can find these videos that you're talking about?
You can find me at on my photography Instagram. It's just my initials, so it's lowercase e lowercase b _ shot TS on Instagram. And I post relatively regularly lately. But yeah, it's just a little something I do for fun, and I really enjoy
shots.
it. Yeah.
Check it out, boys.
Yeah, definitely check that Instagram out. If you want to see how deadly this bloke is, have a scroll, and it won't take too long, I'm sure. We're joined here today for episode 2, and we wanted to have a discussion about investing internally, meaning to the mob, and helping ourselves, versus investing our time and energy externally. To externally, meaning organizations that are, I guess, running the lives that we live, in other words. Emil, you kind of brought up the discussion. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, man, I think, and I'll give you a few examples in regards to the notion of investing internally versus externally. And I'll go with my my externally story first. So I've been working at a school here for the last year or so, my old high school. And I've been having this really, really good time with one of the English teachers there. And we were discussing a lot about like a whole bunch of different like social issues and like racism and classism and all that sort of stuff. And it was all up right in the middle of when like all of that George Floyd stuff was going down, in the middle of where we sort of basically like did a whole big sidetrack of our of what was usually taught, and we just delved straight into all of those issues like that surrounded like Black Lives Matter and like all that sort of stuff. And other very like the experience of marginalized groups over there are very similar to Indigenous people's experience over here. And it was really interesting for me because I was investing to like a lot of non-Indigenous students. Like I was like, oh yeah, all sorts, like giving all this energy, giving them all this perspective, like writing like activities for them, giving them to think critically, like all of this like external like energy that I was giving. And I was really unaware of like how much it was actually taxing me. And I think there were a few penny drop moments, I think, for a lot of the kids, and I think they benefited from it. But one thing that I was really unaware of is how much it was actually going to like emotionally and psychologically burn me out, because I did speak because I wanted them to get to like a deep understanding of where I was coming from, and from some of the exercises that I was trying to exemplify that. And I shared a lot of my personal experience discrimination, which was like really personal for me because yeah, you know, like I think anybody from like a base level of like being a human being, when you experience something that another person doesn't experience because of whatever characteristic that you have that you had no control over because it's just how you were born, it's very like it's, you know, that's just sort of the basis for discrimination, at least is in my opinion. It's very like a hurtful thing because, you know, I'm just there like living my life, and then this person tries to like fuck with me for like no seemingly good reason. It's very like hurtful. So I didn't really realize like, and I was like, fuck yeah, like, because I was like, that's a sick example of discrimination from my own personal experience, because I think it's a much more meaningful thing to express to at least to another human being, because it's such a personal thing, an intimate thing to share. And I was like a little bit like unaware of that, how much it would impact me, because I was because I was so excited to talk to these kids about it. And then I found myself really investing in it over maybe better part of like 2-3 weeks in those classes with those kids. And at the end of it, man, I was like freaking cooked. Like I did not realize, like I think I took like a day or two off work just because I was so psychologically drained from investing that much. And I think it did help some kids. I think it did definitely benefit a lot of them. But and I think I had to like knowing having that experience that I had, I'm very like sensitive to attentive how I'm going to navigate that next time, because I was like fucking wrecked, bro. Sometimes I do wonder whether or not that investment was worth whatever return I got or I felt I got. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm not too sure if it was or not because of how like taxed I was afterwards. But yeah, and I think that's one thing I guess
Can I
we're going to go into is like whether or not. Sorry, yeah, go on.
No, I just wanted to add into there real quick too, because like me and you had a conversation at the time when this was happening, and I think for us in general, we're already pretty drained when things like that happen, just generally, without having to put this extra energy into helping other people understand or see a point of view. We're already drained. Like every time it happens, do you know what I mean? I had a lot of like conversations with my inner circle, with my wife, and then with like friends like yourself and stuff. We're already drained, and then you went and put extra energy on top of already being drained into trying to help other people understand. So I completely understand how you would be so wrecked after, because it was already draining for me. I didn't put any extra energy into trying to like do a program like you did. So I was like, bro, that's like, if you can do that, you can do that. And I can completely understand how drained you would have been, man, because like, you know what I mean? This is the I don't want to say burden, but this is what we walk around with every day. You know what I mean?
With the external, giving your time externally, did you feel like it did not only take like energy out of your body, or what else did it affect in your life?
Oh, really good question, because I had a really like weird internal conflict. You know, the whole notion of like the notion that it's not your job to explain that to other people, because it's like you had no control over like being born with that whatever characteristic you have. And I had a really weird internal conflict with that notion, because I thought that um uh how do I describe it? I had internal conflict because at one end I wanted everyone to understand my situation and the broader situation, because I think from that understanding like can come um what's the word that can come productivity, I guess you could say. um and then um and that just goes like completely against the notion of like it's not my job, because part of me felt like it was my job. um because I thought that like, you know, all of the, you know, when we type in, like when people ask us for information like, oh man, you know, I really want to learn about indigenous issues this, indigenous issues that, and we just say, oh bro, just Google it. And I think like because it's not our job, but part of me is like the information that they find online, like who wrote that information? It's going to be some fucking black fella who wrote about it, you know what I mean? Like, and that person took responsibility within themselves to share that information. And I guess like to share that information and give that broader context for get non-indigenous people to understand like the situation that we're in at the moment. And I think and part of me thinks that um that like, if not me then who?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Feel you.
So that was, yeah, that was the sort of the battle I was having. But at the same time, maybe it's sort of like a double-edged sword that we're always going to have to handle, because like one end we want people to understand, the other end like it's exhausting for us. And I think um I'm still trying to figure that out, I guess. Yeah.
But
What do you guys think about what I just said?
but what's really interesting about what you said too is having to explain things to people, right? Because they're genuinely trying to understand, or they're trying to get another perspective. So if you have the energy one day and you feel like talking about it, right? Because that's the thing. That's the other thing. We can't get locked in and feel like we have to answer. And this is a conversation I've had with my daughter a lot of the times. She's only freaking 10, and people at school are asking her things about being Indigenous. You know what I mean? And she's like, she comes home, she's exhausted, and she's like, sometimes I don't know how to answer them. And I was like, well, Bob, you don't need to have all the answers. Like, you don't ever have to feel that you need to have the answers. But what's crazy is sometimes you feel like talking about it that day, and you give them the context, you give them the time, you talk about it. You know, maybe things were going right that week, everything was good, you were in a good place, and you were able to help them out. And then next time something happens, and they come to you because they're like, hey, Aaron gave me a good perspective. I'm not having a good week this time. I'm not dealing with it well. You know what I mean? And then they're getting that version of me where I'm like, can you just fuck off? Or can you please just go and Google it? Like, I'm not here to educate you every single time. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's different levels to it. And I feel like our non-Indigenous counterparts, sometimes they don't understand. Like I said, we walk with this every day, right? This is the what's in our mind every day, right? And sometimes some of them do. Some of our allies completely understand and say, hey, when you feel like it, or maybe I can catch you at a time when you feel comfortable. They might hit you with that, but then some people are going to ask, and if you don't give them the XYZs on it, they're going to be like, well, fuck. They're just moody all the time. They don't want to talk about this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I see the same thing that you're saying. Like, if not me, then who? That's extra pressure, because then you're like, yeah, I'm in a bad frame of mind. I don't feel like doing this right now. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I guess coming from that, I guess you could say it's more what your basic summary was, at least me simplifying it, that I think in my own head, is like, it's all about energy balance. Like, if you're one day, like you said, you feel good and you're ready to, and you're comfortable enough to express whatever you think is beneficial that you want to express, go do it. But if you're not, and you don't have to, and it's not your job, and if you don't feel like you don't want to on the day, that's totally fine. Like, it's like you're not getting paid to do it. Like, you just do it because you want to, and if you don't want to, fucking don't do it. Yeah. And I think I think that's more or less about energy balance. And I think you hit the nail on the head before, when you mentioned like always having to think about these things, and always having to sort of carry them with you in a way a lot of the time. And I think I think I just wasn't conscious of that, because in one thing, I don't think I was conscious enough, and two, I was really excited to like dive straight into it, because I'm all about that sort of stuff. And I think in my excitement, in my rush to do it, I really like disregarded my own like psychological well-being, I guess I could say.
But can I say something funny? So like the real simple, not as charged version of this that we've all freaking experienced is you get asked to do a welcome to country, and then we're like, well, actually, can't do that. I'm not from here. I can do an acknowledgement in country, but you can also do an acknowledgement in country. And then they want to know why. What's the difference?
Yeah.
And then you're like, far out. How many times are I going to have this fucking conversation? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like, you know, thankfully there's I think it's on the reconciliation site where there's like a little blurb, like a real basic acknowledgement in country. Like you can just send them to that. But like, you know, every black fella has to deal with that at some point. I swear to God, you're going to be asked to do a welcome, and then you're going to have to be like, hang on a second. Yeah. That's like the smallest, like the funniest thing I always find, especially then
investing our time externally versus what we can do internally for our community and where we choose to put our time and attention. Aaron, you're someone that does a lot for the community, and you do it widespread. You do it all over the country. Could you tell us a little bit about the internal side of things, and what does it look like for people that don't know what it is?
All right. So me and my wife, we started this Indigenous Corporation. It's a charity. We started it because I was talking to my auntie back home. I'm from Tennant Creek. And we're just talking about young fellas there, and about how you know, the things, as much nostalgia I have of my childhood, right? I still understood now looking back how little I had, how little we had as a community. And I was talking to my auntie about it, and it really, really pissed me off, to be honest with you. But where people are like, Tennant Creek's not what it not how it used to be, you know, it's gone down the hole, it's a piece of shit now. And I was like, no one's taking responsibility for this. Like, how can you talk about your hometown like it's a piece of shit, and not willing to like talk about the issues and fix them? And it used to frustrate me so much. And then having this conversation with my auntie, she works with the drug and alcohol rehabilitation center there, and she does the youth outreach for that, for the kids that are affected, for those families. And you know, we're just talking, we're yarning, and she said, you know, these kids, it's the same and even worse. And I said, well, what can I do? Like, auntie, what can I do? Like, this is something close and dear to my heart. And I had a whole bunch of, like, you know, old clothes and stuff. And I said, well, if I sent these old clothes and shoes over, will that help? Like, will that help? You know? And she said, I'd love that stuff. You know what I mean? If you can get some football boots. And so anyways, that's how we started. We ran a couple of donation drives, right? And we collected 2,000 pairs of shoes and socks, and we sent them to Tennant Creek, and these kids got to use them, and it was great, right? And then we started to look at, oh, well, if this can happen in one town, if we're able to make an impact with these kids in this one town, there's so many other little towns that are very similar to this. So we can then do the same thing and help a lot of these other small Indigenous communities. And then that's how we started growing. And then now we want to try and get into the mentoring side of things. But we're all internally motivated. So everything we do is about our people. So it's led by us, it's for us. So we directly ask the communities what they want. We directly look at how we can impact the community, and then we try and figure out a way to do it. Which is, it's tough, it's hard, right? But a lot of the programs before us frustrated the crap out of me, because when we were trying to find a way to help, a lot of these programs weren't run by us. Like, sure, blackfellas work for them, but they're not Indigenous owned. And they're running from a process externally, and they're like, oh, these are the things that are going to help these communities. They don't have this and they don't have that. Let's give them this and let's give them that. And the people in the community, there's so many other things that they're trying to fix, or what they deem is more important, right? What they're trying to take care of, and no one's listening to them. Well, they feel like no one's listening to them, right? So there's such a disconnect. So it seems like so just common sense to us, right? Talk to the community. What does the community want? Let's get the community what they need. And then this is something that me and Jack talk about a lot, is building that sustainability where it's all internally ran. So then all Indigenous companies, corporations, all helping out Indigenous communities. But then, if I'm going to bridge it into the external stuff a little bit, is so now it's becoming draining, because there's not a lot of funding sources internally for us to then implement these changes that we can do. There's only so much we can do for free or with the money that we have. And when I talk about the money that we have, I'm a student at uni. My wife is a student just finished studying at uni. So very, very resources poor, right? But we're trying to use the connections we have to try and build up this momentum. So then now a lot of our energy is focused internally, but we're spending a bit of time now looking externally to try and get them to help internally with us. So talking to people externally saying, hey, this is what we do, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what we need to try and have a bigger impact, bigger positive impact. This is how you can help us. It's not really working at the moment. We're trying our hardest, but you know, it's hard. It's a different avenue. Trying to talk to people that see how things have ran normally, and then seeing how we're trying to do things, and it's different for them. But I feel like the investment internally is super important. So everything we focus on, as not just with the donations and stuff, but something that I love to talk about is the exposure. So I don't like using the word luck, but the reason why I'm in the position I am now is because my mum made decisions, tough decisions as a single mum, that led us to be exposed to what life is like in Perth. Led me to meeting different people in different walks of life. And then all of a sudden in my life's journey, I've been exposed to so much that university seems normal, right? So now I'm at university. But then I look back at the town, the mob in the town, their world is just within the borders of that town. So our focus is trying to spread the exposure, because with exposure becomes expansion, right? So if we can expose these kids, because we focus mainly on youth, right? If we can expose these kids to different avenues and different things and different opportunities in life in general, different job prospects, different career prospects, chasing what they want to be, what they want to love, because there's not enough emphasis, not enough investment in that in our youth, then that exposes them and allows them to expand. And then they can go and enjoy the world, right? And this is the other tricky side of the thing, right? So they get to go externally and explore, right? But then even them being external and exploring still motivates and inspires the people internally that are still there. And then they can come back and help internally. And that's just that's how I see it. That's how our whole goal and our whole thing. Sorry for yarning in the biggest ways about that, but I'm super passionate about it.
Is it a conflict for you personally, having to juggle external responsibilities and things that you've got going for you and things that you're passionate about with the things that you're doing internally for the community, like you were saying?
I find it's really tough, yeah, and it leads to something that we've talked about all the time. You know, walking in two different worlds. Man, I feel like a lot of my energy and focus is internal, but I am starting to be a doctor. You know, at a university, working towards having a career in an environment that's systemically not built for our people. You know what I mean? It's and our people are in the hospitals and in the medical system a great deal, right? We're dealing with that a lot, but the system's not built perfect. But I'm also trying to internally build and create this capacity, right? So I every day is a struggle. Every day is thinking about these external things and these internal things. But one thing I've always stood by is I wish Jack was here, because pretty funny story. But we had this yarn a while ago. We had a non-Indigenous person tell us that we just have to understand that, this is his quote. This is a quote from him, that we just have to understand that Indigenous people aren't going to get anywhere in the world without the help of a white man. And like that opened up so much emotion in our group and anger from me, because I feel like we can do it ourselves. We all have, it's different now. And we got some really intelligent brothers and sisters in places that are trying to do things. And like my brother Jack says, once we can start to get us all to move towards the same energy and try and build towards something, it's going to be unstoppable. And that's where I I really want to see us move towards, so that we're not so dependent on external, pushing ourselves external so much, and having to depend so much on what they're doing. Like, for us, I'd love it for us to not have to 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 feel like we need these government grants and government funding for our programs to run. I wish we had internal capital that could then be invested into these programs that work. And then even if they work, the government just doesn't feel like investing in them, and then everything gets shut down. Do you know what I mean? It's unfair. So I really feel like to get to that place, we need to leverage our external to then help our internal build the capacity, so then it's all led internally. And that's where the other conversation comes in about allies. You know, we need the right allies, the people on board that really want to make a difference with our communities, and are willing to, how do I even say it? Are willing to make themselves redundant, help as much as they can until them themselves are redundant and they're not needed anymore. And that's what we need more of. So this is another subject I'm passionate about, and I can talk about for days.
The whole point of Karlawangk is to be unfiltered, unapologetic, to sting people into action with the fire, with those words that you are so passionate about. And I can feel it. It comes right from your stomach. Even though we're not in the same room this week, I can definitely feel the energy. I just wanted to respond to that thought by saying, inevitably, we do want to invest our time and energy internally, but it's a fact of reality and fact of life that we find ourselves in positions every single day where we have to basically run our lives and run everything that runs our lives around the external, like we're talking about. And I just want to talk about what it's like to live in two worlds at the same time. It's a conversation that I'm sure has been spoken on before, but from my personal experience, growing up as a Noongar man in Perth, you're expected to have a lot of knowledge that you're not even given as a young person. When we find ourselves striving for the best and trying to achieve things in our own personal lives and trying to go to university, we are forced inevitably to live in these two worlds. My life has been in a private boys' school. Now reflecting, I feel like they didn't do 100% enough to enlighten everyone about the issues that were going on, because I felt like often the boys were the ones that had to answer the questions. You have to gain keys to unlock these doors, and it's being able to communicate on levels that they can understand and respect almost, so that you can knock those doors over and then be heard with our voice, rather than being looked at by the stereotypes that we have spent our whole lives trying to break through. What do you guys think about that? The idea of having to live in two worlds?
Good, man. It's a really interesting concept, because I guess like my earliest memory of, I guess, how I can relate to this is when I was very young, between the ages of, like, when I was first born and 11 years old. I used to live in my community, Yakanara, which is a very, very small, remote place. And it was really interesting because, like, I remember when we used to go to Victoria for Christmas to visit my mum's side of the family, my non-Indigenous side. My mum would have to, like, almost like prep us to, like, to go and visit. Like, we used to like, get this. So, like, we're Yakanara, middle of fucking nowhere, like middle of the freaking scrub, like in the Great Sandy Desert, like 80 k's south. Fitzroy crossing, like the nearest town, like on a dirt track from freaking the nearest town, and then we had to go from there, drive all the way to Fitzroy crossing, drive 400 k's to Broome, catch a plane, catch it across the country to freaking Melbourne, like the freaking biggest city in Australia. I don't even know is it the biggest or not. And so we had to, like, so going from, like, these two places of extreme, and it was really weird because I remember, like, not weird, but I remember when we were on the plane and getting to my uncle Louis's house, mom would always say, like, oh, you remember to say please and thank you, remember to say this, remember to do that. And it was really interesting because, like, in my language, there's no word for please or thank you. Everything is, like, inherent, like it's it's inherent that if you do something, they're thankful, or if you ask something of someone, it's out of politeness. You know what I mean? There's no, but we don't have please or thank you in my language. So it's like it was interesting, like being like almost like prepped to like live in this separate, like exist in this separate place. So yeah, it was really that's like at least that's my earliest memory that I can think of, where I had to like fathom that there was like this different place that I had to navigate through. So yeah, at least that's the one that pops to my head first. But yeah, and what do you reckon?
Man, I just want to touch on one thing well, a couple of things that Kieran said. First of all,
Yeah.
first of all, I like to use the analogy. You said the keys to open the doors. I use it's the same thing, but I use the tools, right? And I say like your tools in your tool belt. And due to like systemic racism, not systemic racism, sorry, intergenerational trauma, right? The tool belts that we've been passed down to us are like limited in tools that are in there. So the tools that we learn and we develop along our way are then what we put in our tool belt that allow us to continue progressing forward, right? So we start having to develop more tools and dig deeper into our tool belt to then push forward. So I completely understand what you're talking about when you're saying the keys. The other thing is what you said about man, the extra pressure that we all carry around, like every black fella carries around, that we have to be outstanding and that we have to be excellent, like that we aren't good enough, even if we're doing good, and it's crazy and it breaks a lot of us down. So I remember graduating. I graduated from a degree, right? My mom and dad didn't finish high school. I think it was like they dropped out in year 9 and then year 10, right? I think my mom had me when she was 18. Like I didn't even do well in school, right? And I went to school and I got a degree. I went to university and got a degree so that I can get into med school. But I didn't celebrate that I got a degree because to me, I hadn't done anything. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, it was like, this isn't enough. I have to do this, this, and this. And then we run this charity, right? That's not an achievement to me. It's something that I feel obligated I have to do. Like it's not something that needs to be celebrated or anything. You know what I'm saying? We have this extra pressure that we have to be outstanding. And that's another thing that I just took from what you were saying, Kieran. Like we carry around a lot of stuff with us, you know what I mean? And while we're trying to navigate these two different worlds and figure out who the hell we are, we're carrying so much. I don't want to say burdens, but we're carrying it with us. And man, it's a tough subject to talk about too, because I feel like a lot of my to go on what Emil was saying is a lot of my younger life, I had no clue who I was. You know what I mean? I was like this with certain people, then with other people I was like this, and then I started to not even know when I changed. Do you know what I mean? I started to not even recognize that I was acting different around different people. Do you know what I mean? And then I got lost. I didn't know, because it would go long spurts in my life where I wasn't around family, right? I was playing basketball and I was away, and then all of a sudden I'm around family and I change, and then I'm around these people. And I got to a point where I didn't understand who the real me was, where I felt most comfortable. Do you know what I mean? And then as I got older, around our people, and it doesn't even just have to be my mom from home. Like I feel like if I walk into a room and I see talking to a couple of other black fellas, automatically I feel like we're at the same level. You know what I mean? We have an automatic understanding of carrying around those burdens I talked about, of carrying around this extra pressures we put on ourselves. And it already gives you that energy to start off there. Like, I don't need to give any context to what we're about to talk about, or there doesn't have to be any extra added bits and pieces. I had a conversation with my nan. She wasn't doing well health-wise for a while, and I remember having this conversation with her on the phone, and it stuck with me. I know she was probably like, I don't know how serious she was about it, but she said to me, because you know, I'm more proud that I was at university and that I was finally doing something like this or pushing towards something. And she said, you know, you don't need to pressure yourself. You're not the only black fella out there trying to do stuff. You know what I mean? So you're not our last hope. But she said, but every day you better act like you're the last hope. Like you better act with that integrity that you are the last hope, that you're the one that's out there doing this all for all of us. But taking the pressure off me by saying, you're not the only one out there doing it, but that's how you need to carry yourself. And I've always, everything we talk about, and that's where I think this passion and stuff's developed from, is from stuff like that.
What you just said about your grandmother, it really hit me through to the core, because I feel like a lot of us do get that from our elders, the people in our lives, because they are proud of us. And there are a lot of fellas, like we were saying earlier in this podcast, that are trying to achieve exceptional things that necessarily haven't been done before, which is awesome, because that's how we create ourselves as a community, investing internally back into ourselves. And that whole conversation about how do we invest internally back into the community in a meaningful way, instead of just using all the skills that we get from our external life experiences, etc. For example, in my own personal life, I started off in ABC News as a photographer / reporter, and now I've tried to get back into Noongar Radio, our local Perth Aboriginal radio station. That was my attempt of trying to get back into the community, trying to listen to different points of views that I haven't heard before. What do you two think about tips for people? Like, what advice could you give someone to invest internally back into the community? What do you think? That was my personal experience. How do you think other people could do it?
Yeah, good question, man. I think Aaron had a good insight there. And I've got another good friend who's mentioned the same thing. He felt like he's like the first young man of his family to like go to university. He put like this hectic freaking level of pressure on himself. And he thought like he was like the second or third eldest. He just put like a crazy amount of pressure on himself. And then he realized that what he was like thinking that he was preparing himself to take on wasn't like, after in hindsight now, after realizing this weird pressure he put on himself, he realized that that's not necessarily like what his mob necessarily needed him to be like. And I think it's going to take a while for a lot of people to realize like what role they want to play, because I think the role we think we want to play and the role that we can actually have the capacity to play are two very different, can be very skewed sometimes. Like sometimes we're like, fuck, pull this mad pressure on ourselves, but we have the capacity to do, and that is enough for everybody else and can be, but sometimes we're not too sure if it's enough for the expectation we have of ourselves. I think finding that balance is what the sort of advice I would give to somebody, because at least this is the quote, or sort of like the notion that I sort of live by, I've adopted lately, is like, all you can sort of ever do at any given moment is your best, and that's all you should expect of yourself, and like nothing more, nothing less. And I think that sort of circles back to like investing back into the mob, because I think a lot of people, and we know why, and it's very personal for us, like our investment back into the community, because we know that are like, all of the issues that we want to combat and we want to help support and get better. It's like makes us take it really seriously, and that can sometimes, I think, lead to that over the top expectation we sometimes put on ourselves, or like sometimes we can feel from other aspects or other people in the community. But I think it's all about realizing what we're capable of, and realizing that what we're doing in the given moment and what we have done already is like all we can do, and that's all we can expect of ourselves. At least that's more or less my take on it at the moment. Yeah,
I like that. I feel completely with what Emil's saying too. But when I think about what you're saying there too, Kieran, as I think about our mob that want to try and get back into the community or invest into the community, there's different levels of cultural comfortability, right? Because there's some mob that feel like they don't really know any elders, they don't really feel attached to their culture. They know they're indigenous. They would love to be a part of their community more, right? But they're just not sure on how to. And then there's a mob with a lot of connections that can then invest back into the community very, very easily. So And then when I've talked to some people that feel like they're very disconnected from the community just because of, and it's never from their circumstances, you know what I mean? And that's the craziest thing, because we have things like the stolen generation, you know what I mean? Where we've been disconnected from country, from families, where they've just been torn apart, right? And so they're descendants of those people, and they're not sure how to get that connection back. So, but the craziest thing from these conversations I've ever had, because I'm a big energy person. Like, I feel the energy, and that's why I always love our mob, because I feel like every time I draw back to the community, and that's why I say, like, you know, you gotta always do something or work with your community. So you're either working with the community you're from, the community you grew up in, or the community you live, right? The community has energy in abundance, right? So you can go to the community and you can join in that energy, right? And then all of a sudden you have all this energy, and now you've got to think about where this energy is going to be directed. Once you find a way to get in there and get a part of the community, there's so much love. Then going into the community that way and not being afraid to be a part of the community, investing in the community that way. But then it all comes down to that energy and where that energy gets focused after. That's just how I feel, if that makes sense.
I think this has been a really important conversation, because oftentimes we find ourselves in the middle, but I also feel like we need to find more of a balance in between the two worlds that we've spoken about during this podcast. I feel like we've been able to have a great open mic discussion and give all of our perspectives on it. We thank you so much for listening to this episode 2 of the Karlawangk Fire Talk podcast. Make sure, if you want to listen to episode 3, go check out Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the visuals. But if you're looking for the audio, you can find us on the Anchor app. Currently, we've got 92 listeners just on the first episode. So if you're listening to the second and you missed the first, make sure you go listen to the first. You can find it on Spotify, Radio Public, Breaker, or Google Podcasts. Go find that, you mob. Thank you so much for listening to us. And show us who you are. Go comment on the Facebook and the Instagram so we can put a name to a face. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great night or day wherever you're listening. Look forward to episode 3. Till then, Karlawangk Fire Talk. Talk soon, you mob.